Welcome back to SCTV. I'm your host, Brianna Trefiro, and today we're in for a special treat as I interview the candidate for Massachusetts State Senate, Brian Cook.
Hi, Brianna. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So how about we start by you telling me a little bit about yourself and maybe your background in the South Shore?
Sure. I guess to simplify, a typical South Shore person. I grew up in Weymouth. My family has been in Weymouth forever. My dad's family literally has been here since the 1600s.
Wow.
My mom's family more recently arrived. Both her parents were born in Ireland. And she and my dad settled on the South Shore, like so many other South Shore people, looking for a safe place to live, raise their kids, with an opportunity for their kids to have a better life than they did. And that's what we were given. It was a wonderful experience growing up on the South Shore. I was involved in just about everything. Some great teachers and great coaches and great parents who gave time. And my focus, I guess, as a kid was sports in school. I played hockey from the age of 6 or 7 all the way up through college. People like Mike Breen, who coached at Scituate High School, were friends growing up, and I spent a lot of time in the Cohasset Winter Gardens in those days. But worked in the South Shore. My brother was a landscaper, so I spent a lot of time in Scituate. We actually did all the work at the Minot Light Inn. Graduated from Weymouth High School. I went on to Holy Cross, where I graduated with a degree in history and political science. Played hockey for 4 years there, and then coached and taught for a number of years, and then went to law school at Boston College. Practiced with a firm that was largely South Shore people, Roach Cairns and DiGiacomo, and did a lot of municipal work. So I've worked in almost every town in the South Shore, zoning matters and municipal matters. Had an opportunity to work on many of the issues that impact the South Shore, such as transportation and housing and the business climate. So I'm excited about taking 25 to 30 years of experience and applying it to a public service situation like being the senator from the South Shore.
Wow, that's great. So what inspired you to run for public office?
I think it's something that I've always thought about. My family was very involved in public service. My great-grandfather was sort of Mr. Weymouth. He was the town moderator, I think the longest sitting town moderator in the town's history. He was a state representative from Weymouth, principal of the high school. He became the clerk of courts in Dedham, and then a judge in the Norfolk probate system. But he was one of the founders of South Shore Hospital, Weymouth Bank, and the Fogg Library, which I had the pleasure last spring to rededicate. We reopened the library, and I was able to give them a document that the family had passed down to me, which was the original will which created the library.
That's cool.
So that was a nice way of staying involved in Weymouth and giving something back. But in terms of public service, and I guess in terms of this job, when I was in college, I worked for Senator Alan McKinnon, who was the Democratic senator from the South Shore. And watching Alan and watching the issues and seeing him interact with people in the South Shore made me think, this is something I'd like to do someday. And I've thought about it for almost 25 years. And during that time period, there was always a reason not to. You know, the kids were at a certain age. I didn't want to take time from my family. The incumbent senator had been there a long time and was well received. And finally, when Bob Hedlund decided to step down, it seemed like the right time to consider this.
Great.
So when the special election came, I looked at it but realized that I wasn't going to have enough time to really get to know the issues or get to know the people of the South Shore. Mm-hmm. So I took that time to meet with fire chiefs and police chiefs and teachers and municipal workers and really get a feel for the issues that impact the South Shore. And I feel like I'm better positioned now to start trying to address those issues because I've got a better handle on the things that impact the South Shore.
That's great. So just to backtrack a little bit, you said this is Bob Hedlund's previous position, right?
Bob Hedlund had been the senator. Alan McKinnon was the senator. Mm-hmm. Alan stepped down. Bill Golden took over. Brian mm-hmm. McDonald stepped in. And then Bob has had the job, I think, for the past 22 years. Mm-hmm. He stepped down to run for the mayor of Weymouth.
Right.
And they held a special election back in May.
Great. So going off of that, could you describe this position a little more and how this impacts
Sure.
residents?
Yeah, it's an interesting position in that the way the state sets up local offices, the state representatives, people like Jim Cantwell and Josh Cutler and Jamie Murphy and Tom Coulter, have 40,000 people, usually a town and a half in some cases. Garrett Bradley's district had 3 towns, Hingham, Hull, and North Scituate. And those are about 40,000 people. The state senate has 4 times that number, so it's 160,000 people. So there are 8 towns in the district: Weymouth, Hingham, Hull, Norwell, Scituate, Cohasset, Marshfield, and Duxbury. And the state senator is the person responsible for representing those 8 towns and working with the various reps and all of the various townspeople. I mean, just in Scituate alone, I took a look at your website, there are 35 departments. Of those 35 departments, there certainly are a lot of local people working to make sure that the municipal services are provided and people are, health and safety is taken care of and any needs of the community are seen. So if you think about 35 departments in 8 towns, you've got 260 departments that a state senator or someone overseeing the area would have to become familiar with. So when I looked, I thought, there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good work who I'd love to try to help in some way. And I think the focal point of this position is sort of twofold. It's identifying the issues. One of the major tasks of being a state legislator is to understand what public policy issues need to be addressed, what's out there that's of concern to the people in the district. And 2, being able to draft legislation that can address those public policy concerns. And I've had experience in both of those areas in terms of drafting difficult documents and also identifying problems and trying to resolve them. I've said to people before that for the most part, lawyers get trained to win arguments. I was really trained to solve problems. So I see myself more as a problem solver than a person who's sort of out fighting with people over who's right or wrong. It's more a question of how do we work together to make this work for everybody. And that's one of the ways I saw this job working is going into this position, working with all the people who are already established and doing the hard work and helping them to get the job done for their community. The major issue, I think, for the state is having people in those offices that have the ability or the interest and the ability to fight for appropriations to bring back to their community. Infrastructure issues, education issues, helping our seniors, helping our vets. In a town like Scituate, working with the fishermen, making sure that the industry is supported, that the lobstermen in this area are not competing with foreign lobstermen or federal issues that impact their ability to make a living. At its very core, the economy is the key to almost everything. If the economy is going well and revenue is coming in, then there isn't a need to raise taxes or have overrides. And this community, from its start, back in the 1600s, when you think of Scituate and you say, okay, how did Scituate start? It started as a seaport community, and moss was one of the big products in this town. We have the Irish Moss Museum here, and it is an issue that a lot of people don't know about. People don't realize that, that type of product was such a part of our economy in the old days. That was what our roofs were made out of. That's what fed the economy. And if you look at Scituate as a community geographically, it wasn't really easy to get to. So the waterfront was a major part of the community and continues to be. So it's very, very important that we work with both state and federal authorities to make sure that the waterfront is protected.
Yeah, that's great. So you kind of touched on it a little bit with the previous question, but there are obviously a lot of important issues, especially for this election season. What would you say is probably the most important or most pressing issue that you'd want to address if you were elected?
Yeah. There are a lot of issues. I know transportation is a major issue in the South Shore. We're sort of held hostage by Route 3. The commuter rail has certainly made a difference. Education is enormous. Almost every family that's come to the South Shore comes with a view and a focus that they want to make sure that their kids are given every opportunity to succeed, and our school systems are the focus of that. Obviously seniors, making sure that our parents and our friends can grow old with dignity and stay in their homes for as long as possible. And clearly veteran services is extremely important to me, as are other human services issues such as mental health and the opiate crisis. But I think all of it comes back to the economy. If the economy is strong, there's money available, then we can address many of these issues. We don't have public officials fighting over whether we can add a police officer or a fireman. We don't have to worry about whether that teacher who is teaching that reading course that is essential for some kids to find success in their academic experience to disappear because we can't fund it. We don't have to worry about after-school programs, or we don't necessarily have to worry as much about kindergarten and other issues. So if the economy is strong, and we have a strong economy on the South Shore, and we continue to create well-paying, secure jobs in the South Shore, a lot of the other issues just fall into place.
Yeah.
So that will continue to be a focus for me to make sure that the South Shore, as an amazing community, continues to attract businesses and good jobs to this area.
So speaking about the South Shore as a community, on your website you outlined the importance of regionalization. Could you talk a little bit about why it's so important to foster a strong South Shore identity and how you would plan to do that?
Sure. The South Shore is an amazing place. It's an incredibly independent community. It's 8 very similar towns with 8 very different profiles. The people of the South Shore all, to some extent, drift back to the Pilgrims and people settling in this community to build a life for their family, and to a large extent to sort of be left alone to pursue their lifestyles and their world. We're separated a little bit from the rest of the state because we're on the seacoast, but the seacoast sort of unites us all. So whether it's Duxbury or whether it's Hull or whether it's Weymouth or whether it's Scituate, we all think of ourselves as seacoast communities. As 8 separate towns, we're fighting 8 separate battles, but as one district, we're 160,000 strong. And the hope is to take those 160,000 people with similar needs and bring them to Beacon Hill and fight for what we need on this community in this area, whether it's seawalls in Marshfield, or whether it's making sure that the fishing industry is protected, or making sure that the bridges and the highways function correctly, or making sure our school systems have the right resources to get the job done. I think if we're united as a community, it's a whole lot easier to go up there and make those arguments than it is for Hull just to fight for something that they need, or for Hingham to fight for something that they need. The redevelopment project that's being discussed at Paragon Park and in Nantasket would be a wonderful thing for the whole South Shore.
Right.
You know, it's interesting. I say to people all the time that, you know, what unites us as a community is our shared experience. If you're someone my age, you know, you remember the roller coaster at Paragon Park. You remember Farfar's in Duxbury, or you remember going to Welcome Farm in Weymouth or the Venetian. Those are the things that make you say, I'm a South Shore person. And those are the kinds of things that we want people to continue to think about when they think about the South Shore. Think about their unity, all the things that bring them together rather than pull them apart. So the hope really is to become a person who, to some extent, is an information station. I want the people who work for me to be there for people from the South Shore when they have an issue, such as I need to talk to someone about veterans benefits for my dad, or my mother's having an issue with her medical care, or how do I access South Shore Hospital, or you know, how do I have a son who's dyslexic, or I have a child who has an opiate issue, who do I call? I want us to be kind of a legislative help desk. I want people to be able to call. I want someone in every town that works with us that can be there, that they'll say, oh, Brianna's in Scituate, call her, she knows. I called last week, someone actually showed up at my door, they addressed my problem, isn't that wonderful? Because to a large extent, you know, we talk about the presidential election and we talk about the process that's going on, and we're very excited and very engaged this year, and people are actually discussing politics. But at its most basic level, it comes down to townspeople, it comes down to the state reps, it comes down to the state legislators and the senators, and those are the people that people reach out to when they really have a problem.
Right.
And as I like to say to people, I want people to look and say, what am I getting for my money? You know, I elected that guy, I elected that woman. What are they doing for me? And I want to be able to have that response always be, geez, when I made a call, they were there. You know, they answered the call, they answered the bell. And that's who I think I've always been as a person. Whenever anyone had a problem, I always wanted to jump in and help. And so this is an opportunity, I think, to do that on a grander scale.
Yeah. So you touched on it briefly, but again, so what ways will this election affect Scituate and Scituate voters? I know you talked about the fishing industry and things like that, but just briefly, what other ways may it affect Scituate?
It's interesting because I think people have gotten frustrated with the electoral process, and they're wondering, how does it impact me? I thought about the election, I went and voted, I voted, nothing changed. I had an issue, nobody addressed it. Geez, they raised my taxes after they said they wouldn't. Boy, you know, a lot of promises were made during the election. Where are we now? And I think those are all very, very important issues, and I think the parties have to speak to people again and speak for people. People want to know that the people that they're electing are fighting for them, are there for them, are there to support them. And so I think that, you know, for people from Scituate, this is a very important election. We have 4 very talented and very committed Democratic representatives on the South Shore. We've had a Republican senator for the past 22, 24 years. This is an opportunity to combine that whole group so that you'd have a unified Democratic force fighting for the people of the South Shore. And I think the people of Scituate are looking and saying, okay, what is this person or what is this election going to do for me? And I think this is a pivotal time, and I think it's a great opportunity for Scituate to look. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but it's an opportunity to look and evaluate and say, what do I really want in that person that I'm thinking about voting for? And I look at it similarly to when I was involved in executive search, where I said, okay, hiring somebody is sort of like electing somebody. You're asking for someone to run something for you, to take care of something. So what do you look at? You look at the person's education, you look at their experience, you look at their background, you look at their judgment, you look at what they've done, sort of their track record. And you say, okay, I've got this person here and this person here, you know, which one do I want to work for me? It's sort of like this weekend, I spent a good deal of time up at South Shore Hospital with a family member, and I thought to myself, you get to the front door and there are 2 doctors standing there, and you have to pick one. And so, you know, you look and you say, okay, who is the one with the experience and the background and the ability to take care of my problem? And that's the same as what you do in an election, is you vote for that person. So
going off of that, why is it important for Scituate voters and South Shore voters to vote? Next month is the primary.
Yes.
So not only in the election in November, but why is it important to vote next month?
Huge. Great question. One of the things that we're seeing right now on the national level is people wishing for another choice. They're saying these people are running. It's wonderful that people have sacrificed their time and their energy and their personal lives to jumping into the election, but I don't really like the choices. You know, it's like getting to the car lot and there's 2 convertibles and you want a pickup truck. So the hope in any electoral process is that a lot of people jump in. That a lot of people who care, who are concerned, who are committed say, I'm going to take a shot at this. Give the electorate a chance to evaluate and say, I like this one better than this one, or I'll take the Cadillac, or I'll take the pickup truck. And that's difficult when there aren't any choices. So if people don't turn out for the primary, they're sort of, I don't want to say stuck with, but they're left to make a choice between whatever is available when they get to the general election. So in the primary, they get a chance to make selections and make choices, with the hope and expectation being they get to, I guess, evaluate the field, make a choice, and then say, that's my person, and then follow them through the general election and support them, and then remind them when they get into office that, hey, I voted for you. And I expect you to fulfill your promises. And in many cases, and we saw this obviously with the Kennedy family, that people stayed with them forever. People that voted for Jack Kennedy when he ran for Congress were there when he ran for president. And so it's sort of the same thing on the South Shore. It's why we see people getting reelected, because if you go into the position, you do a good job, people will bring you back. But if you go into the position and you don't do the job, then the electorate has to know you have a chance, you have power. That vote is probably the most powerful weapon we have in America, and you need to exercise it. So we're hoping that on September 8th, people will come back from the long Labor Day weekend and say, okay, that's it. I've put the plywood on the windows of the cottage, I've put the bikes away, I'm not going to use any more suntan lotion, I got to go vote. Because now I've got a whole long winter to worry about, and this is important. So we're hoping people will see it as important and will turn out. And whatever the result, we're excited about the fact that people are talking about elections, and we're excited that they're talking about the process, and we're excited that they're talking about the candidates. And I'm available if anyone has a question or an issue. They can contact me or Jesse or Susan from my staff and speak to them directly. We're happy to come to your homes and talk to you about the election and the process and what we offer, and we're hopeful that at the end of the day you'll say, geez, this is somebody who might be able to help.
Right, and we'll get to the contact information in just a minute,
That'd be
but
great.
I think that what viewers should recognize is that state and local elections are just as important, if not more important, than the presidential election this November.
I think that's a great point, Brianna, and it's really great that you raised it. On the presidential election, we get to talk about big issues. We get to talk about these enormous security issues and these homeland security and many of the things going on across the ocean. But the reality is the things that really impact us are our taxes, our school system, the bus system, whether the trains run on time, whether or not we're going to get that turf field, whether or not there's going to be gymnastics this year or ice hockey, or whether a rink will be built. One of the things a few years ago I got involved in, I built the Bog, the hockey rink down in Kingston, because the South Shore had closed 3 hockey rinks and kids were getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to skate. And we thought, this is an opportunity. And we found that if you get together with other talented people on the South Shore, they will get together as a community and make things happen. And that gave me faith that almost anything we wanted to do, we could do in this community. We have an incredibly well-educated workforce. We have an incredibly committed group of people. We have people who really love and believe in their communities and care about their families. And at the very basis of the whole thing is 8 towns all pushing in the same direction, who can get almost anything done they want to if they do it together. And nothing would make me more excited than to be part of that and contribute on some level.
So we just mentioned contacting you or someone on your staff. How can viewers find more information, either on your website or a phone number? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting. When I first thought about running for office, I thought it was going to be sort of like old-time politics, where you declare that you're going to run, you stand up there and the crowd cheers and you get elected. And we went back and did some research, and we were fascinated by the changes that occurred effectively when President Obama ran, and their social network and social media was a huge part of the equation. So in our case, we have obviously jumped on board. So we have a website, which is cookforsenate.com. You can go to Facebook, Cook for Senate, or you can contact Susan Hobson, who is coordinating communications for me, at 781-635-6245.
Perfect.
Susan Hobson at 781-635-6245.
Great. Perfect. And just to start wrapping up, what does Scituate as a community mean to you? I know you have a lot of ties in different towns throughout the South Shore, but Scituate as, away from just the fishing industry and everything like that, but what does it mean to you?
Yeah, that's a very interesting way of looking at the district. We've looked at it both as a community, as a single source. We've looked at it as individual towns. And having been here over 50 years, grew up in Weymouth, lived in Marshfield for a time, lived in Duxbury for the past 22 years. My roommate from college was from Hull. I spent a lot of time there, and obviously a lot of time in Cohasset and other towns in the South Shore, and I now work in Hingham. So I think I've got a pretty good handle on all the towns, how they're the same and how they differentiate themselves and what matters to them. With Scituate, it's an interesting situation, because Scituate is always been a little bit isolated in that you are a seacoast community. And the train has made a little bit of a difference, but Scituate people are very Scituate-centric. I was at Heritage Days this weekend. It was really exciting to watch so many people, and I've come for years to watch the music. And I have a musician in the family who coming down and seeing Jerry. But it really is a wonderful place. The Playhouse was a place I used to go as a kid on a regular basis, if not the Cameo Theater. And so what you guys have, I think, in this election is a very interesting series of choices. Joan Moschino, as you know, who ran for the Senate seat, is now running for the rep seat in North Scituate, Hingham, and Hull. So she is on the ballot on the Senate side, even though she's not running on the Senate side. She's running on the House side. On the House side, Garrett Bradley, who had served part of this community, is not running, and his name will appear on the ballot as well, but he's not running. So effectively, when they look on the rep side, there'll be 2 people that they will have to write in. They'll have to make a choice. On the Senate side, at present, I'm the only person on the ballot who is running. There may be other candidates who may decide to be write-ins or sticker campaigns, but right now I'm the only person running as a Democrat on the Senate side. So the hope is that when people look at the ballot and they see the two names, they will, if they choose to vote for Joan, they will vote for her as a rep, not as a senator, and they'll vote for me in the Senate side. And then depending on what happens on the other side of the ticket in the general election, there'll be two choices at that point. But the hope and expectation is that we will reach out to the voters, we will offer them something that they may be interested in, which is energy and experience and some scars over the years of getting knocked down and getting back up and knowing how to do that and to fight aggressively for the people of the district.
That's great.
You know, I've often said to people, what I lack in talent, I make up for in persistence. So I'm looking forward to being a very persistent, focused state legislator, state senator for the South Shore.
Anything you'd like to add just to wrap things up? Any additional message you'd like to give?
Yeah, I think the big message is that elections are important, and we should look very closely at the people we elect and hope they're going to be people that are going to give us what we need. Make that decision the way you'd make any important decision in your life, and hopefully be very pleased with the decision you've made. And my promise to the people of the South Shore is that, as I have been for the people in my family and in my life, I will be there for you.
Great. That's a great way to end.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
well, it was
perfect.
really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
Okay.